welcome to this series where I cover what I believe to be the worst episode of a particular season of Doctor Who. Or rather, for the first 6 seasons, the worst complete episodes, because I don't think I can give a serial fair judgment if I have to rely on telesnap reconstructions. Thank you, BBC, and your junking policy. Let's get started, shall we? It's time to figure out which episode's getting reviewed, because I seem to revel in making people guess. Well, I just said that I wouldn't review missing episodes, so Marco Polo's out. Besides, there's a condensed version available, and based on that, I think it's fair to say that it wouldn't be the worst thing this season. I'm also eliminating the best episodes of the season for obvious reasons. The remaining 3 have one thing in common. They have interesting concepts, but they're marred by terrible execution. So which one had the best execution? Personally, I'd say it's the censor rights. The first couple of episodes are quite freaky, and it's another highlight of the Doctor's character development. I find it a bit awkward that the first episode is among the low points this season, but like I said, the execution brought it down. In the end, it came down to which one had the worst script because both were quite hard to sit through. Which will it be? The story with cavemen and politics, or the story with the fetch quest? Congratulations, you fetching little cereal! To the chopping block you go! Before I get into the review proper, let's talk about this serial's sordid history. Originally, it was going to be a different serial called The Hidden Planet. Written by Malcolm Hulke, it would have featured a twin planet to Earth that was ruled by women. Earth's twin, huh? Sounds familiar. However, the first episode's script was rejected, resulting in the Keys of Marinus being hastily commissioned to take its place. The Hidden Planet never became a serial, but some of its core ideas were used for future stories, like the aforementioned The 10th Planet, and Galaxy 4, which featured a world ruled by women. As for who got saddled with the task of writing the Keys of Marinus, that honor was given to Terry Nation. You know, the guy responsible for giving the world this.
You will move ahead of us and follow my directions.
Surely there's hope for the story, right? Well, considering what type of show this is, there is no hope. So let's go on a hunt for the Keys of Marinus and see what happened. We open on the crew arriving on the planet Marinus, where they go off to explore. Because that worked every other time they did it. That's an interesting way to fish. Multiple lures, one line. Anyway, Susan thinks it's a good idea to go swimming, despite knowing little about the place. Probably good that she doesn't get far because...
No, Susan, don't!
Yeah, there's a reason why this episode's called the Sea of Death. Elsewhere, some ships arrive. They carry the Vord, a bunch of people wearing silly helmets and wetsuits. While Susan's out to get new shoes, she sees some footprints and walks off, not noticing the Vord behind a small rock. Peripheral vision isn't a thing, I suppose. Meanwhile, the crew finds the ships, including a wetsuit that once belonged to a Vord, but... well, I'll let them explain.
I don't think it did get out. There's a tear in the material here.
You mean the acid got in? Poor devil.
See, this is why you're told about safety procedures in chemistry class. They soon notice a large building which the Doctor wants to visit. Remember what happened with the Daleks, Doctor? You nearly got your companions killed! Susan also happens to be by the building and is nearly attacked by a Vord when a crewman saves her. Only for her to get captured anyway. That Vord is rather determined to attack Susan, but is stopped by... Really, what else happened? The hooded figure did it? Unless he can teleport, that's unlikely. And there's no hole in the wall for the knife to go through, so... yeah, the wall killed a Vord. While exploring the building, the other 3 are captured, but Ian manages to save the hooded man from another Vord, earning his trust. This is Arbatan, who proceeds to tell them his situation. Unbeknownst to them, however, a Vord is eavesdropping on their conversation. How rude. Arbitan's been keeping vigil over a machine called the Conscience of Marinus, which removed evil from the minds of everyone on the planet.
They no longer had to decide what was wrong or right. The machine decided for them.
In other words, it stripped everyone's free will. That's usually reserved for the villains, not a good guy. Speaking of, the Vord are being led by a guy named Yartek who wants to use the machine to take over the planet. And that's about it for the Vord's backstory. Ian asks why the machine hasn't been destroyed, as he brings up a good point about it doing more harm than good. The answer's obvious: there wouldn't be a story. Actually, it's because Arbitan and his people wanted to modify the machine so that it was once again irresistible, so they relocated 4 of the keys around Marinus. The 5th one is in Arbitan's possession, so naturally, Arbitan asks the crew to help him retrieve the keys. Unsurprisingly, they decline, which leads Arbitan to perform some drastic measures.
If you help me find the keys of Marinus, I will let you have free access to your machine when you have delivered all the keys to me. If not, you will stay on the island without food or water.
Yeah, Arbitan's not exactly a saint. It's hard to root for him when he wants to strip away everyone's free will with the machine. Yeah, he has good intentions in mind, but he's still trying to eliminate free will. This would make more sense if Arbitan was secretly the villain and the Vords were the ones trying to stop him, but that's not the case. After Arbitan gives the crew the general locations of the keys and some travel dials, they set off. Now keep in mind that there's a Vord who's still listening in. They know what's happening and have plenty of options to choose from. So what does the Vord do? That's right, they just straight up kill Arbitan. And there's no indication that they do anything else because that's pretty much the end of episode 1. Okay, there's a cliffhanger that leads into episode 2, but considering it comes up again at the very beginning of it, Arbitan's death is pretty much the end. Speaking of episode 2, it starts with the group looking for Barbara, who had teleported before them, only to get bombarded by loud noises and flashing lights. Turns out Barbara's okay though. She's being treated like royalty. Funny, considering what the very next serial's about. Also, no one except for Ian is noticing anything suspicious about this place. How they're being treated nicely and promised to have their every desire. Not even the Doctor suspects anything. Then again, this is early classic Who. The Doctor wasn't exactly fleshed out by that point. Surprise, surprise, this whole thing is a trap set up by the villains of this episode, the brains of Morphoton. Yes, of this episode. If you're expecting the Fords to show up again anytime soon, well, I'm sorry. Anyhow, the brains want to put the crew under their thrall using these discs that look like miniature energy domes. Probably would have worked if the chick made sure none of them fell off. So now Barbara's the main character, since while everyone else is convinced that they're in paradise, she sees a dilapidated mess. Honestly, I find this scene to be pretty good. The audience, along with Barbara, can clearly see the truth, but the others cannot. It creates some dissonance that can unnerve viewers. Trust me, this serial needs all the praise it can get. So Barbara flees from Bedsheet Man and winds up with the chick who put the discs on everyone, named Sabitha. She goes on and on about being punished, but eventually Barbara notices the key around her neck.
It's mine. But why? Why did you want it? It's mine.
Never do that again, Sabitha. Their brief talk is enough for her to help Barbara escape from Bedsheet Man, only to run into another problem. Remember when I said their plan would have worked if Barbara's disc never fell off? Yeah, Ian's been completely brainwashed and almost kills Barbara. But then... Okay, the brains really should have had someone watching over them, and I kind of find it hard to believe that a small metal jug could destroy their entire setup. So either the brains used materials from Fraggle Rock, or Barbara is simply too strong to be contained. The Doctor decides to head off to the final area by himself, while the others head off to Area 2. Oh, and as it turns out, Bedsheet Man is another guy Arbitan sent named Altos. He and Sabitha will be joining the crew for the rest of this adventure. Yay. Susan heads off into the next area too early, resulting in some angry screeching that promptly goes away in the next episode.
I've heard it before.
Where?
Well, that's just it. I can't remember.
Sounded like the TARDIS was screeching at you, Susan. Maybe it's sick of being stuck on a beach surrounded by acid.
You know, Susan, looking at this archway,
Oh God, don't do what Evil Dead did 17 years later!
it couldn't move by itself. You know it couldn't.
Barbara, what did you say last episode?
You can't apply Earth standards. You just can't.
Maybe you should take your own advice. To make matters worse, Barbara gets separated from the others via booby trap. But at least she got the key. Except Sabitha with her wicked good eyesight reveals it's a fake. Whoops. But don't worry, now Ian can share the spotlight with Barbara. Oh, and I want you to remember that fake key and Sabitha being the one who has it. Weird request, I know, but trust me on this one. Anyhow, the two companions eventually reunite, but get caught up in more traps, including the always popular net trap. But whoever designed them decided to give people a 2-for-1 combo with that one because look! Descending spikes! Don't worry, Barbara's not dying here. She's not scheduled to leave for another season. The old man interrogates her and takes her travel dial. He doesn't last long as he gets strangled to death by a vine. Yeah, the companions save him, but he dies not long after, for some reason. He looked fine before he got strangled, so I have no idea what killed him. Maybe he just wanted to get out of the story. Ian and Barbara ransack a secret room in an attempt to find the real key, since the old man left a couple of dying clues. They just barely find the key and escape, only to wind up on the verge of freezing to death. That's episode 3, everybody! In the next episode, a trapper named Vasor finds the two stranded in the cold and steals their key. Unlike the old man, however, he's courteous enough to bring them to his hut. He even gives Barbara advice on how to treat frostbite. Though that kindness quickly goes away once Ian sets off to find Altos. Oh, and Vasor has everyone's travel dials plus the necklace of keys. And he tied up Altos and left him to die in the cold. And it's heavily implied that he wants to rape Barbara. What a nice man.
You all right?
Oh good, now this can get less awkward. So while the group forces Vasor to help them find the girls, they're chilling in a cave with hardly any fire left. They leave just as the others arrive, forcing us to listen to Vasor's whining. Yeah, sure, keep complaining about demons in the mountain. No one cares. Okay, maybe Vasor wasn't whining about nothing. You know what he is, though? Someone who can't be trusted with a bridge. Though that's partially Ian's fault for not thinking that maybe he shouldn't be left alone. But it's all good. That room of the warriors happened to have a key inside. And look! A way to make the ice melt! Though they didn't notice that one of the warriors has leaned over and... Oh God, it's alive! Run away! So after Susan uses some large icicles to get across and fix the bridge, the group manages to return to Vasor with the warriors hot on their tail. Unfortunately for Vasor, but fortunately for Susan, he's stabbed in the back by a longsword that somehow didn't go through his body, but I'll attribute that to the time period this is made in. So now the group's in the final area where the doctor is. Surely this means it'll be easy getting the key, right? Ah, someone getting framed. My favorite kind of plot. So yeah, in the 5th episode, Ian gets framed for murder and robbery. And in the ass-backwards city of Millennius, you're guilty before proven innocent. Lovely. Not helping matters is the insufferable Terran who, if I hadn't known better, could be accused of being the actual culprit.
The laws in this country are a mockery.
I quite agree with you, my boy.
Doctor!
Convenience told me that I needed to be here at this exact moment. It's time for Ian to stand trial, and... Is it wrong that I miss seeing that icy wasteland, or that screaming jungle, or Morpheton? Hell, I'd rather be back on that island just to get away from this courtroom drama. So the doctor gets 2 days to gather evidence, and we get to see the group doing various things to help prove Ian's innocence. Barbara and Susan, however, manage to find a lead after Susan gets under this guy's skin.
Don't you talk to me like that!
Welp, there's someone who won't be missed. 2 days later, the doctor and Sabitha use some trickery to make Aiden slip up, but before he can reveal who was responsible, he's murdered. Sadly, this isn't enough to prove Ian's innocence, and he's sent to be executed, while it's revealed that Susan's been kidnapped. Yeah, because this needed to go on for 2 episodes.
Susan?
One of which is the last episode of the serial! The group once again goes to Kala, who's rather distraught and unable to help. Turns out there's a different reason for that.
Your friends were here looking for you. No, don't look hopeful. They've gone and they won't be back.
You know, you probably would have succeeded if you hadn't slipped in your conversation.
Leave me alone. I do understand and I sympathize with you. You must have been sick with worry since you spoke to Susan, but I just can't help you. I know nothing.
Fortunately, Barbara realizes this and manages to get Susan out of her situation. Unfortunately, Kala incriminates Ian as a final FU to the group. Then it just so happens that Susan overheard a conversation between Kala and the third mastermind, allowing the doctor to come up with a plan. Is this almost over? Thankfully, yes. That night, the last of the guilty party is captured, the group is given the key, and Taryn and some other guard are left to ponder the whole thing. Great, we're getting back to the island. How much time's left? Really? So that's barely over an episode's worth of screen time for the Vord? You know, the guys who are trying to get the key so they can rule the world? What have they been doing this whole time?
Arbitalia's dead. You hear me?
Did they seriously spend this entire time playing dress up? Okay, I would fault the Vord here, but from what I understand, they are much more competent in other media. So as far as I'm concerned, Yartek is an imbecile! Since Altos and Sabitha went ahead, they've obviously been captured. Sabitha tries to pull a gambit to save Altos, but it fails miserably. So after Altos rats the others out, Yartek shows how smart he is by putting in the 4 keys. One of which was already in the machine, meaning someone took it out. Truly the leader the Vord needed. Okay, it's almost over. Let's get it over with. Ian and Susan meet up with Arbitan, and Ian hands over the final key.
I gave him a key. Sabitha, you remember that fake key? Barbara found it on the idol.
I remember.
That was the key I gave him.
Wait, when did you get the fake key? Sabitha had it last, and not once did she decide to hand it to Ian. There's only a couple of answers I can think of. One, Sabitha gave the doctor the fake key, who then unknowingly gave it to Ian. I say unknowingly because the doctor's actions following this reveal imply that he never had the fake key. That or Ian took it off Sabitha's necklace between episodes, but that seems way out of character for him. That means this entire situation got solved by one glaring plot hole! So the courtroom crap and the ramshackle plot weren't enough, now there's this! So the fake key destroys the machine, something that should have happened from the start. Altos and Sabitha's names are repeated over and over in their goodbyes, presumably to make sure their names are remembered. And the TARDIS crew leaves. Roll the credits! That was the Keys of Marinus, which should serve as proof that you shouldn't rush a story. There were some good ideas in this serial. Episodes 2 and 3 were the high points for me, and I feel like they could have been at least decent serials on their own. Too bad they were thrown into this trash heap. Most of the companions got to shine here, but Susan. Poor Susan. I can't help but agree with Carol Ann Ford. She was portrayed rather pathetically here. Something bad happened to her in almost every episode. The closest thing she gets to a break is when she helps Barbara investigate during episode 5. This is coming from the same character who ran around in radiation to get some medicine for her friends. And in a story by the same writer, no less. The forgettable characters don't help. That thing I mentioned about Altos and Sabitha's names being repeated constantly? Yeah, I legitimately forgot their names and kept forgetting them until I started taking notes for this episode. From what I've gathered, the Vords were meant to be the next Daleks, but they failed miserably. Their leader, Yartek, is stupid. Rather than doing something sensible like his own key-collecting quest or sending the Vords after the group, he does nothing but gloat and pretend to be Arbitan. The low amount of screen time makes matters worse. Seriously, they only get episode 1 to themselves. They had to share episode 6 with the Millennius plot. And speaking of the plot, oh dear. This is not how you execute a fetch quest story. The keys are the only things that make these plots related to one another. Really, this serial is just 5 different plots compacted into one, and you can tell they don't mesh well together. This could have worked better if there weren't as many keys to collect, or again, the Vords were chasing down the keys as well, leaving chaos in their wake and giving this serial a race against the clock feel. Instead, we got a rushed and forgettable serial that is better off being skipped. That's all for this episode. Next time, I'll cover what I think is the worst complete episode of Season 2. Will it feature a companion leaving, more Daleks, or, I don't know, insects? This is gonna be fun.